Morphin time! Yeah!
For many years we have been told about the original Power Rangers, the first in history, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. These were the first to be televised in America and were the first that most of us Power Rangers fans were introduced to. This group was composed of 3 men and 2 women, which were Jason, Zach, Billy, Trini, and Kimberly. Later Tommy arrived as the 6th Ranger to complete the team. With this team we lived many stories and battles that we will never forget. The impact of this group was so great that after 30 years they are still the most relevant in the Power Rangers franchise. Hundreds of fans are still looking for stories about these first Rangers, which were formed by Zordon and Alpha 5. What many don't know is that before this group of Power Rangers there was another group of 5 Rangers. This happened before Rita escaped from her imprisonment in the space junk capsule in which Zordon had put her. The plan was for Rita to be locked in there forever, but after many years an enemy arrived to break her out of that capsule. This enemy was the Green Psycho Ranger, who used to be called Trek and was part of the Supersonic Rangers. These were Rangers on another planet and Trek was their Green Ranger. Trek betrayed his team and killed them all. Although the Supersonic Rangers were no longer alive and their morphers were destroyed, their power remained in the Morphin grid, and sometime later the Power Rangers Megaforce used this power. Trek had constant arguments with the Red Ranger on his team as he felt he was not being included in missions. This caused Dark Spectre to get inside his head, telling him that his team did not value him. Trek began to follow Dark Spectre's orders, and because of this he took the life of his team. Dark Spectre then used his dark power on Trek's morpher to turn him into the first Psycho Ranger. These events occurred in 1869, and after this same year, Dark Spectre sent the Psycho Ranger to the moon to get Rita out of the capsule. But what they didn't know is that Zordon and Alpha 5 had placed defense cannons all over the galaxy, including the moon. These cannons shot down the Psycho Ranger's ship, which had to be put into hibernation mode in order for it to survive. In this mode, the Psycho Ranger would be put to sleep until the ship encountered signs of life. After 100 years, in 1969, there was an event about to occur, a trip to the moon by the United States. Zordon knew that, if this trip happened, that they would bring the Psycho Ranger ship out of hibernation and it would awaken to free Rita. At that time there were no Power Rangers on Earth, so Zordon and Alpha 5 planned to start the first team. For this first Power Rangers team they cast Torona Washington as the Yellow Ranger, an African-American soldier convalescing in a hospital after wounds received while fighting in Vietnam. Daniel O'Halloran as the Pink Ranger, a college student involved with the anti-war movement. Jamie Gilmore as the Black Ranger, who was a British singer. Nikolai Chukharin as the Blue Ranger, a KGB intelligence analyst, and Grace Sterling, the first Red Ranger in Earth's history, who was the head of NASADA's secretarial pool. Zordon transported the team to the command center and explained to them the gravity of the situation and what their mission was. This team had a serious problem, and that is that each one was very different and none of them knew each other. This was not a good thing since the greatest strength of the Power Rangers is the team battle, and this first group did not know how to be a team, and they were about to face a very powerful enemy that had already defeated another Power Rangers team. Alpha 5 proceeds to send them to the moon, and as soon as they arrived, they started arguing amongst themselves. Grace takes over and tells them that they had to split into two teams. She, Trona and Daniel were to search for Rita's capsule. Nikolai and Jamie were to scout the area to provide security and be on the lookout for any danger. At that moment the Psycho Ranger found them and quickly hit Nikolai. The blow was so hard that Nikolai almost flew off into space, but Grace managed to catch him. Then the Psycho Ranger reached for a rock and crushed Jamie to death. Although the Rangers fought back, the Psycho Ranger was too powerful and broke Daniel's helmet, who died of asphyxiation. At this point only Grace, Trona and Nikolai were left alive, and they combined their weapons to make a smaller version of the Power Blaster to take out the Psycho Ranger. Unfortunately, this energy beam had the opposite effect, and instead of killing him, it only gave him more energy to become a giant. The Rangers fled and found one of the cannons that Zordon had placed on the moon, which had shot down the Psycho Ranger's ship. This shot had to be fired very close to be effective in destroying the enemy. Nikolai then grabbed the cannon and told Grace and Trona to make it worth fighting for the world. Nikolai then let the Psycho Ranger swallow it and shot it from the inside. This destroyed the Psycho Ranger, but also Nikolai. After the mission was over, Alpha 5 returned them to the command center, and Trona told Zordon that he was irresponsible for sending people who were not trained to use their powers and work as a team in a battle like that. Zordon apologized and told them that since the Earth was no longer in danger, then they had to give up their powers. Grace and Trona were furious, as with those powers they would have been able to help in the conflicts on Earth. If you like this story, like this video, and subscribe to this channel, to travel to the moon like the Power Rangers.